what we want to talk about now is different methods that are available on. So we've seen that we can create a scanner that points to system.in. So when we want to read in from the user, we would create a scanner. Let's say k new scanner system.in. So this was kind of the first thing we learned to use scanner with system.in, and that allowed us to ask the user for input and wait for them to type it in. And then with files, we learned to use scanner where we give it a file. Now, we also learned a couple methods on scanner. What we're going to do in this video is learn a little bit more about scanner. So the first thing I want to do here, when we ask scanner, if it has next, and we're reading the next line, sometimes we might not want to read the next line. So we learned that if we want to read like a word, we would use next line. Well, let's go to the file and let's assume that, here I have cat is, 10 pounds and the dog is 15 pounds and the rabbit is 3 pounds. So now I have a file that has two things on the line and I want to be able to read each one individually. Well, the first thing I would want to do is I want to read like a line. So we learned some string methods. So what I can do here is I'm going to read a line. And then what I can do, let's just take this out for now. What I can do is I can split this line. So I can say line, I want you to split yourself. And if I don't give anything for the split, the space is the split, is the delimiter. And sorry, let's try that again. I do have to give a string, sorry. So I'm going to give it the empty space. So the white space is the delimiter. And this gives me back a string array. So I'm just going to call it parts. And now I know that the syntax is the animal space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and say parts of 0. This is going to be the name. And the weight is 1. But parts of 1, what I want to do to it is convert it to an int. So I'm going to use the integer class, the wrapper class, and say I want you to parse this int for me. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the string, the whole line, splitting it on the space, on the white space, and then I'm breaking it up into the two parts. The first part is the name, the second part is the weight, and here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write it to the print writer, but as a sentence. So I'm going to write name, weight, plus, let's say, pounds. Let's see if it's going to be able to parse this for us. And here it doesn't like it. So when it tried reading input string A, it didn't like it. Oh, I forgot to put a space here. Sorry. Let's try one more time. Okay. Now let's go back and see what copy has. And now it says cat weighs 10, 15, and 3. So it was able to parse it. So my mistake here is that I split on the empty, which means it's going to split by character, but I actually want to split on the space. So that was my mistake. So here what we did was we read the next line and we split it. So now, is there another way that we could have done it with another method from next, from scanner? There is. So this is one way of doing it. So I'm just going to comment this part out. And the second way we could have done it was we could go to the scanner, and instead of saying give me the next line, I'm just going to say give me the next thing. And we kind of used next in Java 1 before to just read in a string. So what the next does, it reads in a string. If we just look at the methods. So next returns a string. Just like next byte returns a byte, next float returns a float, next returns a string. And the difference between next and next line, both of them are returning strings. But the difference is next line waits for the user to press enter to give you what the user entered. So if you had some spaces in there, it would actually read the whole line. It doesn't stop when it sees a space. It stops when it sees enter. Next doesn't do that. It actually stops when it sees any kind of white space. So here I'm going to just say, give me the name, read me the name, and then read me the weight. And here I don't have to use, I don't have to read it in a string. I can just read it in as a number. So I can just give me the next int. So name will go, it will read from the file until it sees a space. So it'll read cat and then stop. And then weight will read the 10 as an integer. Let's try that and see if it gives us the same output. And we get the same output. So the purpose here is just to show you the difference between next and next line. Next line reads until it sees an enter. Next will read until it sees any kind of white space. Could be a space, could be an enter, could be a tab. Now, the other thing I want to show you about Scanner, so this was the next line, and this was an example of the next. Now, the Scanner, you can also change the delimiter. So when you're creating a scanner, the delimiter for the scanner is the white space. That is when it knows that, you know, when you call next, it says, this is what I want you to stop on. Well, with the scanner, you can change the delimiter so that when it sees some kind of delimiter, it will make that the stopping point. So for example, if you wanted to read one character at a time from the file, you can set the delimiter to nothing. Let's try that. So here, I'm going to come to my input and I'm going to say, I want to read one char at a time. So set delimiter to empty. So I'm going to come to input and I'm going to say input. I want the delimiter. Sorry, use delimiter, not set delimiter. Input dot use the delimiter, and I want the delimiter to be nothing. Okay, so here, if I just make it the space, okay, the space is the default. So if I do this, nothing should change in my behavior. Well, actually, it changed. Input mismatch on next int. Okay. So here, what I want to do, let me actually debug this while I'm with you on the video. So let's see what it actually read. So here, what we want to do is we want to print out the name. This is what it read. And then here, before we do this, what we're going to do is we're going to read it in as a next. So let's do this. Let's see what it did. Next item equal to input dot next int. And let's print it out to see what it read. It might be an extra space that it read, but let's try it out and see. Just put a dot after to see what's happening. Oops, here next. Okay, let's try that. Okay. So here it read cat. Okay, so here what it did was it read cat. So the first time around it read the cat in, and then it read the 10 in. No, I'm not sure. Let's try again. Name plus name, and then here, let's call it next item. One more time to see what's going on. So the name, it read the name in, and then it read the 10, which is right, but it only read 10, but it didn't read, it didn't add the, oh, it read 10. Okay, this is what it read in. It read 10 enter dog. That's what it read here, because I said I want you to use the delimiter as the space. It didn't recognize that enter was also a delimiter. So here, that's what messed it up. So if I really wanted to, I would have had to come here to the file and put a space after each one. Let's try that and see if that's going to fix it. Nope. Now it's still doesn't like it. So the delimiter is tricky. I've always run into issues with it. So here, if you want to make the delimiter like something else, like the space only, it's not going to work because you have enters. Now let's go back to the example that I wanted to show you where I just want to break it up by character. And so here, if I do that, I'm not going to be able to read a number. So let's take this code out. Let's take the debugging code out. And let's take this out and this out. So this is not what we want to do. We want to read only one character at a time. So let's read, let's put this up here. Here we're just going to read one thing at a time and print it on different lines. We're not going to go to the output file, so we can just see it here. And when I set the delimiter to just nothing, what it did was it read one thing at a time. So it read one character. So this is another way you could read it. You know, if I had a file that had things that have dashes between them, like cat or like, you know, colons, cat 10, and then dog 40, for example. And I change my delimiter to be the colon. Now I can read, like, it's going to stop every time it sees a colon. The use delimiter, it's also used for patterns, and there are different ways that you can use it. So if you want to kind of parse so that it stops every time it sees a number or like it sees an uppercase letter, you can use patterns with it. Now I'm not going to go into details. I'm just kind of trying to show you some of the things that you can do with the scanner object. The next thing that I want to show you is how to scan a string. So if you have a line that you read in or a big string, what you can do actually is create a scanner out of this line. And then because that scanner is looking at that line, you can use some next and next int methods to actually parse this line. What does that mean? So let's here just kind of ignore what we did so far. And let's just comment this out. And what we're going to come here, I'm going to create a scanner, line scanner, equal new scanner, and I have a string like dog is, or let's say my name, and let's say my age, and then my social security number. So let's say this is the string, and we have a file that has a bunch of these strings. Well, what you can do when you create the scanner, you can take things out, like, so I can say like fname equal to line scanner dot next. So it's going to give me the first thing. And then the next thing is my last name. So then I can say line scanner dot next. And then the next thing is my age. So I'm going to go to line scanner next int. And then let's say the social security number, line scanner dot. Let's just print them all out. And plus. Let's just put the SSN at the end. I think my while loop, I have an infinite loop, yeah. So I need to comment out the while loop because it's trying to read from the file. And it was going into an infinite loop because I wasn't reading anything. Okay, so let's move that down. over here. Let's try one more time. Okay, so now it was able to parse it and read it in. So we can create a scanner from a string, and then we can use the scanner methods, the next int, next line if I wanted to, and parse it in using those next methods. So this is really convenient. Instead of using the split method that we learned before, we can use this. Now, the nice thing is also is that, let's say, this file or this scanner, the string, copy it. So let's say I have a file and there are different ways of reading things in. So one line might be the age followed by the social security number, and another line might be the social security number followed by the age. So here, when I come to do this age, I'm not sure whether it's an age or a social security number. I can actually ask the scanner. So I can go to the scanner and say, scanner, is the next thing that you have an int? And if it is, I'm going to read the int in. Let's just say int age and string SSN. Let's create them here. So here I'm saying I don't know whether the user is going to enter their age first or the social security number first. So I can check with the scanner. I can say, if the next thing you have is an int, I want you to read an int. Okay. Otherwise, it must be the social security number. So I'm going to read the social security number next. Okay. And since these are, I know that there are two things that I want to read, I can use a loop that runs 2 times. So here I can say for I equals 0, I 2, I plus plus. So here I know that I have 2 things to read, but I don't know what they are. An int, the age, and one of them is the social security number. And let's just initialize this to 0 and this to the empty string so that my print here doesn't give me errors. And so if I give it the string, it recognizes that this is a social security number. And if I change the string over to the first one, it still recognizes the age and the social security number. So just like it has methods like give me the next int, give me the next float, it also, you can ask it if it has a next specific thing. So has next in general just says, do you have something for me to read? Has next int will check if the next thing after is an int. So you can kind of look forward to the next thing that you're doing and check, is it an int? Is it a float? Is it a string? Is it a string? It just has next. But you can actually check if it's a number so that you know when to use the next int and next float method. So this is also something that is nice and convenient with scanners. Now this is just a slide that I put here to review parsing. Again, strings to numbers. We use the wrapper classes like the byte, parse byte, short, dot, parse short. So all the primitive data types have corresponding wrapper classes that we can use to parse. And these, like I said, are handy when we're reading a string and we want to convert it to a number. And then what I just showed you was how to actually check if something is an int. If the next thing that you're reading is an int or a float, what you do is you can use the has next int or has next float methods.